Well, welcome to our UChicago Master of Liberal Arts information session. We are thrilled to have you here virtually at our gorgeous university. Here is a fall edition of the campus, although it's a little bit more wintry right now as we prepare for even more snow tonight. We're going to cover 5 areas in the information session. We'll welcome and give you a sense of who is on this call from our side. We're going to give you a snapshot of the MLA, then we're going to go deep into the learning journey. We'll talk about the logistics, the timeline, and details for those of you who decide to become candidates. And then we'll get to your questions. And we keep these intimate so that we can really answer everyone's questions. So let me start by welcoming. My name is Seth Green. I'm the Dean of the University of Chicago Graham School, and we're the home for really rigorous lifelong learning and leadership. And I'm going to turn it over to Tim to share who he is, and then we'll ask Beth and Carrie to do the same. Tim, who are you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Murphy. I'm serving as director of the Master of Liberal Arts program. I've been with the Graham School working with the MLA for 10 years now, and I'm excited to get into some of these details here shortly.
Great, thanks, Tim. Beth, you are one of
Yeah,
our recent graduates. Do you want to share a little bit about your background and
absolutely. Yes, I graduated recently back in 2024 and started in 22. I currently have a consulting practice, but I've worked in cross industries as an executive on the corporate environment, and came back and started took kind of new path using the MLA, which I'll talk about a little bit tonight.
perfect? And Carrie, who are you? Oh,
See, I am. Dir-
there we go. Perfect. You're coming through now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Dempsey. I am Director of Recruitment for the Master of Liberal Arts program. I'm thrilled that my team and I get to work closely with each of you as you take the next steps in your educational journey. And I look forward to walking you through our admissions process a little bit later during the conversation.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to come back, especially to Tim and Beth throughout the conversation, and then we'll come to Carrie at the end as we talk about candidacy for those who choose to become part of our selection process. So, the MLA, in a nutshell, it is a program designed to help you grow as a leader, a problem solver, and a communicator through advanced studies in the liberal arts. And we have 2 whys behind this. The first is that the world is changing very quickly. And we believe that liberal arts education has never been more valuable because it gives you the foundational tools to be able to rigorously think through the big questions of our time. And so there's a lot of training today about how. And what we're trying to do with this degree is really give your mind the training to ask the big why questions and to see new and creative possibilities. The second is that we believe that deep study really allows you to fuel your professional growth as well. And that for many people, they hit a point in their careers where they are thinking in many ways about the tactics of what they're trying to achieve. And that taking a step back and thinking about some of these big questions, often outside of your direct domain, allows you to build a new muscle and see even your current work in new light. So one way that we've often framed this program is as a cognitive boot camp to advance both your education and potentially, if you're in the prime of it, your career. And we think it is able to help you in 3 specific ways to sharpen what's sometimes called your synthetic thinking. That's the ability to bring lots of different concepts together and be able to synthesize them. There was a student who told me that she happened to be in finance. She was in a cosmology class, and the cosmology class helped her to think about billions of years and how to summarize the most important developments from a scientific and universe perspective. And then she happened to go back to her business work and be asked to put together a story of these very complex changes that were happening in finance. And immediately she relied on the paper writing she was doing for cosmology because in her mind, it had so much similarity in being able to take all of this information and think about how do you tell a simple story that weaves together authentically these big ideas, but does so in a way that's comprehensible to an executive, in this case, audience. The second thing that it allows you to do is it allows you to specialize. So you can really go deep in an area that is meaningful to you. And we have three concentrations: ethics and leadership, literary studies, or tech and society. And then perhaps the most valuable part of the MLA is that you join a really vibrant community. And that's very special in that people are there for the love of learning alongside potentially trying to advance their education and life. So I'll just say a little bit about the who of the MLA. We have a very special student body. This is typically a mid to late career or life degree. We have people that typically already have a graduate degree that live across the country and world. And the average is someone coming with about 20 years of professional experience, with many people who hold executive or other titles. That said, I want to be clear that many people come purely for the love of learning. So while we have that group that has a professional aspiration, we also have a significant number of people that come because they have gotten into a place in their life where they really want to be back in school and they want to do so rigorously and deeply. And for some, it's even at the point of retirement where they say, I want to be able to now embark on a really deep and rigorous education as part of this next chapter of my life. So the reasons for coming are varied, but what people have in common is that they are curious, they are rigorous, they are innovative, and they are collaborative. And those are kind of hallmarks of the University of Chicago student profile. So I've said a lot about the program already, and I want to come back to Tim, who directs it, and Beth, who has actually lived it. And Beth, can I start with you? And can you talk a little bit about why you chose to pursue the MLA? And given that you already had, in your case, the MBA, maybe a little bit about how you saw it complementing that degree.
Absolutely. Yeah, I came into the program. My undergrad degree was in journalism, and then I had gone back and got an MBA at some point later, a bit ago. And this was, it really complemented, and it goes back to the concept that he talked about, the lifelong learning. That's really the spark of it, and kind of an innate curiosity, which really kind of ties through the whole program. But it also kind of at a stage in my career where I was going a different direction, and it was just really when you have an MBA, it's more the tactical side of it, but the MLA was broadening my brain. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but really broadening my thinking. And I did the ethics and leadership concentration, and I looked at the program and the classes, and I had the chance to come to one of these sessions and spend a lot of time with Tim before the program started. And really at the time, it just, again, timing wise, career change, thinking about a different path. And that's why I did it. And it's just, and I'll talk more about why it's been such a good change in direction for me and how it's been so helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Beth. Tim, you've seen hundreds of MLA students at this point. Beth is an example of the type of background and student in the program. But can you just talk about maybe a few other examples of the types of individuals that are in the program?
Sure. Truly one of the main strengths of this program is the diversity of our students, which is a wonderful thing generally, of course, but it does tend to make answering this sort of question difficult because such a diverse student body has a diverse set of motivations for pursuing the degree. But at a high level, I'd say a few common reasons students decide to pursue this MLA degree include a desire to challenge themselves intellectually, to push themselves to think more deeply and creatively about their interests or about the world around them or their professional careers, as we've mentioned. Relatedly, they come to improve their critical reading skills. Of course, everybody knows how to read, but reading critically is a different skill set altogether. But maybe just to try to provide some more specifics to this question, I might point to a few common categories. The first that comes to mind is people who work in tech or tech adjacent fields. For example, two of our current students are senior program managers at Microsoft. And one new student that started with us this fall is a software director at Raytheon. And unsurprisingly, these students pursue our tech and society concentration and appreciate taking a liberal arts analytical lens to think about the technologies that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And of course, by virtue of their careers, they already understand the how of technology, but they're pursuing the MLA to better equip themselves to think about the why of technologies, and to step back to those bigger questions. Um, Another category, and I don't want to echo too much of Beth's excellent response, but business leaders or aspiring business leaders, a consistently large segment of our student body, are in this category. Many earned MBAs in their 20s and 30s, and they're coming to us a decade or 2 decades later, um, again, to push themselves and to think about their leadership in different ways, and to take their leadership to the next level. And finally is the personal enrichment or lifelong learning crowd. The only point I would make here is just to underscore what Seth said on that student profile slide. And that is, while we've seen many students utilize the skills they pick up in MLA classrooms and apply it to their professions, but always a large segment of our students are just here for personal enrichment and to keep on learning. Some are still in the midst of their careers, and they describe this as filling in the gaps in their prior education that they maybe feel was too narrow or technically focused on career advancement. Others are retired and don't want to stop learning. And the MLA is housed in the Graham School, where the university is home of lifelong learning. So of course, those students are very much welcome in the MLA as well.
Well, so Beth, coming back to you with one more question before we jump into the learning journey. You have worked with C-suite executives. You've been one. You now advise them with your consulting firm. How do you think that your MLA courses have helped you to think about leadership? Because you mentioned the leadership and ethics concentration. And what do you see as the value of liberal arts education in our current moment?
Yeah, it's really an important question, and also back to the why of why I did it too. As I mentioned, I had the ethics and leadership, and some of the classes that I took, ancient leadership wisdom, digital ethics, neurobiology for everyday life, just some using and my special thesis, the thesis that I did was connected. I built a 10-week class around the issues related to AI. So it's very topical, and it really bringing those skills and some of the ones you listed in your comments about the critical thinking, the deep study. I mean, I think having an MBA, you're very like, okay, we're going to get this project done. We're going to do this. It's very it's big thinking around business models in that sense. But this really helped me look at how people think. It's a Socratic approach in the classroom, and the core point of connection is that people are curious, but they're and they push you and push how you think. So that was part of it too. So, and the idea of really thinking about big questions and taking that back into my practice, and just actually my everyday life, things that you're reading about, and learning. And another point around the University of Chicago, this is another reason I like 10 years before had come to, they're really good about inviting the people to come in and to programs and really being part of that community. Can't, that's, I go back now still and go to like today, Seth put on something around healthcare and longevity of healthcare. So it's that concept of really, being involved in the issues in the world that are important, and having a good way of thinking about them and exploring the big questions of our time. And from the classes and being in the classroom to doing the special project thesis that I did, and that's just it just made me a stronger thinker, and also looking at people and how they think, and really going in a deep reading and thinking basis.
And Tim, final question for you before we jump into the learning journey. How have you seen individuals grow? I mean, Beth described her experience, but would love to just broaden that out in your observations.
I think the most obvious response that comes to mind right away is to speak to the confidence that students talk about gaining in the classrooms. It might be a strange word to say, given that all of our students are smart and motivated, and many of them are professionally accomplished. But all the same, it can be sort of intimidating to have your return to school be at a place like the University of Chicago. So it's always very rewarding for me, and unfortunately, I get to see this frequently. It's always very rewarding from my perspective to see students who starting off are a little bit nervous and enrolling in their first class in poetry or literature. And then we see them and I hear from the faculty that they're thriving in class and they're participating. And then they're eager to sign up for a neuroscience class. I got an email today from a student that said, when can I register for the science class in the spring? That speaks to the confidence that they build in themselves, undertaking this rigorous intellectual challenge.
Well, I'm going to share my screen again, but we're going to come back to you momentarily after we give a snapshot of the learning journey. And so I'll walk everyone through what we see as the methodology behind the curriculum in the MLA. And it starts with this color-coded visual, which is there are 4 core classes, and those are the 4 divisions of knowledge at the university. And so this is truly a liberal arts degree in that you need to take one class in each of the domains of knowledge across the university. Now, we realize that you are not necessarily coming in with deep mathematical and quant skills or background at a level of depth in the physical or biological sciences. So those courses are actually taught by the faculty who teach the very advanced courses, but with an understanding that it is a generalist audience. You still will read academic journals and very rigorous research, but the faculty member will help you to decode it, and you will not be asked to do any mathematical calculations. You will be asked to think deeply about what the research means. So we say that these are courses that are for a generally educated and engaged audience, but not an expert audience. But the cool side of that is you're going to be with extraordinary physical and biological scientists alongside humanists and social scientists, and you'll be able to do that because you're going to be in a classroom where they've set up for people that are like you. Once you've taken those classes, you then take elective classes. And that allows you, and we'll talk about this in a moment, to concentrate in a specific area. But you can take electives across the curriculum, or you can focus them in a way that allows you to show expertise in one of those 3 concentrations that we'll talk about in a moment. We also have a non-Western requirement to make sure that people are seeing the full global opportunities at this university. And finally, we have a thesis that capstones your experience, which you get to design in partnership with a faculty member based on your interests and often where your interests meet an academic opportunity for exploration. So having described that as the general curriculum, I mentioned those electives can be organized into concentrations. And as you heard briefly about earlier, there are 3. There's ethics and leadership, which is really helping people to think about how they lead others, how people across time and space have asked questions about different leadership practices. And it's a chance for self-reflection and a way of examining yourself against how people have looked at this across time and space. So as an example, in this curriculum, there's a course, World Wisdom Literature, where you're literally reading how people across all of these different cultures have interpreted leadership and a good life, from Marcus Aurelius to people that are writing about this today. We have literary studies where you're going deep into extraordinary texts and you're using that as a way of shining a light and sometimes for personal enrichment and wellness. And then we have tech and society where we're increasingly attracting a lot of people that are involved in tech and who want to ask the questions around why, and who want to be able to look at this not just in the current moment, but in terms of how people across time have thought about massive disruptions and really significant changes from a technological advancement perspective. So that then leads you to your capstone, which is a thesis or special project. And this is maybe the most meaningful part, that you really design this journey and you entirely design your capstone. And it can be based on something that is of deep interest to you. It could also connect to something that you may work on if you want to bring that into the project as a way sometimes to have the value come not only for your academic learning, but also for your professional advancement. And so you'll see here a student who was from Chile, recently graduated with this comparative analysis of the American and Chilean revolutions. I will say, just as a coincidence, he was actually on TV on election night in Chile on several channels because he was helping to analyze the election, having taken his studies here, learned a lot about politics here, gone back and done this analysis. He was able to really help people in Chile to understand and engage with the US election, just as a fun example of how he's applying his degree. There was another person, as you can see, who looked at the economic survival of small Chicago area farmers during COVID-19. That was written during COVID. They were really interested in this question, and it was impacting their own local community. And then a final example here of someone using poetry as leadership training, someone who wanted to take this gift of poetry and figure out, how do I apply it in a professional context of helping foster a more equitable and inclusive college. So those are some examples, and I'm sure Tim and Beth will be able to share more with us based on their experiences. We say a few things make our UChicago classroom really special. The first is that we have gifted facilitators. So we do select individuals who are tenured professors, they have deep research, but we are very careful to select those who not only have that level of rigor and scholarship, but also know how to really facilitate shared learning in a classroom. And our view is that the role of the professor is to call on the wisdom of the room. So even though this is a degree that is primarily on Zoom, it is not a one-way degree. We have the classroom set up for a very high level of exchange of ideas. And we believe passionately in having all viewpoints welcomed, such that you will hear views that you may disagree with, and that we hope will challenge you to learn in new ways. And then finally, we are a program that really values the ability to do this alongside busy lives. And so classes are set up in a convenient format so that you can have these synchronous seminar discussions. As I mentioned, we have some of the most eminent faculty of the university who teach in the MLA and who we call the faculty, and really do play a key role both in your classroom, but also as advisors beyond it. And then one of the things we've added over the last couple of years that has been very popular is a residential seminar. So as you know, this is an online degree primarily, but we really believe there's something special about the beautiful campus you're looking at on your screen. And so we have seminars where you can come for a week and complete a whole class. And what that allows you to do is really be part of the life of the university, even with a busy life and career. And so you'll see on the left here some of the topics of our recent seminars, which have been very well attended by the MLA student body. Alongside providing that academic journey, I just want to be clear, we are very focused on making sure that you are successful. And we know that for students that might have been out of the classroom for a decade or more, it's really important to give you specific supports, given how higher education may have changed. So we certainly have academic advising for you. We have a writing advisor, which is probably the most used resource because many people haven't written papers of this type in a while. And she works very closely with you to help and will provide constant feedback along the way. We obviously have library access here to one of the best in the world. We have a vibrant alumni network, and then we have ongoing events both in person and online. But again, let me not be the one to tell you all this. We have two true experts in the room, our director and our alum. And so Beth, can I start with you? With the benefit of hindsight, how would you describe the educational experience of the MLA and who is in the classroom with you?
Yeah, I can actually, I think it might help to give you a couple of examples. And I did the residential seminar. I highly recommend doing that for one of the classes. But I think you made the comment about coming back. I'd been out of school for quite some time, and coming back, my first class was some versions of the apocalypse, and I was nervous about, is this the right thing to say and all that. But right instantly, the professor do you call them talk about a facilitator, but really pushed the conversation, and it really tied to the people in the room is a really good way to put it. And people are so curious and thoughtful and engaging. And you do it through, there's on Canvas, you can have some written points, but the conversation within the class And then moving on to one of my classes that I had later was an environmental class that was taught by Professor Archer, where you had to read pretty in-depth articles around environmental issues. And then you had to synthesize and, and present a paper each week and one of the articles. And it was just, I remember at the end, we were like, this is like a group of friends just sitting around talking, but you're learning so much. And I think the other side is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And I've been in, I did investor relations my whole career, so I could, synthesize information in business, but this is different. This is really pushing yourself to think broadly. And the people in the room use the words collaborative and rigorous and engaged. And they just are people that I'm going to be friends with forever. And we come back and stay in touch. And it really, just great thinkers. So that's kind of gives you a little bit of an overview.
And Tim, can you just talk about what you see as distinctive about the classroom as someone who's seen into so many of them?
Sure. So the most distinctive feature is the Socratic seminar that's already been mentioned. So I'll just add a little bit more context to that detail. The Socratic seminar means that there's almost no lecturing in the MLA. Students aren't receiving knowledge from faculty; they're co-creators in the process. So that means our classes meet live for 3 hours once a week for discussion. And that discussion is enhanced by us deliberately keeping our classes small. We'll cap the enrollments for each class at 20 is a maximum, but more commonly there's around a dozen or so students enrolled in any given class. And keeping that intimate environment is important to ensure all those voices are heard. We had a meeting among our alumni advisory board late last year, and one of them said something, and I jotted it down because I like the phrase. She said that it's like having a box seat for the show because you're right there in on the action. And so in that environment, you have 12 or 15 students from all across the country, different backgrounds from you, with different life experiences. So they're going to view the questions on the table in maybe a starkly different way than you would. That's the magic of the classroom comes from exchanging those perspectives and those ideas. Spirit of joint inquiry is a phrase that U Chicago uses in different contexts, and I think it captures that dynamic very well. Of course, there's going to be disagreement and debate in the classroom, but it's all done collegially and with an eye on being productive and getting the whole group a little closer to understanding whatever topic is on the table. And I'll just, the last thing I'll say about that is truly the faculty are just as eager to be part of that conversation, to be in the room with those students as the students are. So yeah, the Socratic seminar is what distinguishes us as a program.
So Beth, you talked about a classroom where we have rigor. Tim talked about the Socratic method. Everyone's expected to co-create knowledge. This may sound a little intimidating. Can you just talk a little bit about what it was like to come back to the classroom later in life, what the supports were like in terms of empowering you to be successful? So what was it like to come back, and what supports were there to help you to succeed in that environment?
I'd say, like I think I mentioned, is that I was, coming back, I was nervous. I'd been out of school for quite a while, and it wasn't at first wasn't intimidating, but the professors make it. First of all, that's one side of it. Make it so like they're there to support you and your colleagues within your class too. It's very respectful, and I think sometimes when people don't agree is when it's interesting. It makes it interesting, and if available, so the professors, but also the team, everybody here, on the call, Seth, everybody is just available and help. The resources, the library. Like during my thesis project, I could go online, put a note through my university ID, and get they send me all sorts of information. And then I had a professor that helped me through the process. He would give me ideas and thoughts that I would go down the path and expand on. And it just, I never once, I felt, or I guess to put it different, I felt so supported.
Yeah.
And it's from, I'm taking 2 classes. That's too much. I'm going to, I'm going to go into 1, or I'm going to do 2 another semester, and just to get the schedule set up. And then if I have questions, always available and very responsive on all sides. So and like you mentioned the writing side and other supports there as well. And also your colleagues within your class. I had an ethnography class where, during the part of the class, you go off and you help each other in your ideas and make your project better. So that's where everybody is just very excited about making that happen.
And Tim, anything to add on the resources available to our students?
Program staff are deeply committed to student success. So there's tailored academic advising, making sure students are enrolling in classes that will meet their degree requirements, but also match their interests. And a program staff will also help students stay on top of managing administrative requirement deadlines and that sort of things. Faculty are another important item to list in this resource conversation. Faculty are also deeply committed to student success. They are, they're busy, of course, but they are very generous with their time and are available to meet outside of class and office hours, and also very understanding that our students are likewise very busy. So within reason, they're accommodating with paper extensions and that sort of thing. And then the incredible writing support made available by the MLA's writing advisor, Millie Ray. Writing advisor that title doesn't even really begin to scratch the surface of the services Millie provides. I've heard her say that writing is more than just putting the right nouns and verbs together. Writing is, in a lot of ways, especially in the context of MLA writing is thinking. So when Millie works with students on their papers or helping them to organize their thesis proposal or execute the thesis process itself, Millie's, in addition to being a writing coach, Millie's really a thought coach. And so staff, faculty, and writing support are essential to student success.
Well, I'm going to come back to you when we get to Q&A, but I want to now move on to the logistics, because if you are now saying, I am curious about potentially applying to be in the MLA, we want you to know how you can do so. And I'm going to introduce again my colleague, Carrie Dempsey, our head of marketing and enrollment, to talk about that process. Carrie?
So next steps are, we have our application deadline for spring coming up very soon. So that is on March 4th. And I know you think, oh, that's a month away. I have plenty of time. You'll see in a couple minutes, there's actually quite a few steps in the application process. So really, I would be starting those steps within the next week or so in order to ensure you can have everything accomplished by then. And then our first day of class for the spring will be March 24th. If there's anyone here tonight that's considering autumn admission, our application deadline for autumn will be September 3rd. So as you can see in the application process, I said there's quite a few steps, and there are. The first is you will need to submit a writing sample. We do encourage you to use something that you may have already developed. Most of our students have a piece of work that they've already written, maybe a report at work that they submit. We typically look for about a 5-page piece here. You can send us your writing sample before you submit your application. We will review it and we will let you know if it will work as this piece. If you don't have something that something existing that you can use, some of our students write maybe a review of a play or a movie that they saw and submit that as their sample. Anytime you save repurposing something for your writing sample, we strongly encourage you to focus that time on your candidate statement. This is such an important piece of your application process. It really helps us get to know you and why you feel that this program is the best fit for you. And then you are required to have 2 letters of recommendations, either personal or professional, academic or professional. And then you submit transcripts from every university that you have attended. At this point in time during the application process, we only need unofficial transcripts. You do not have to submit official transcripts until you are admitted to the program. We also request an updated CV or resume. If you don't meet the university's English proficiency requirements, you will need to submit TOEFL scores, and we do need those a few weeks ahead of the deadline because it can take a little bit of time for those to process. We have a $75 application fee, and after you submit your application, we will reach out to you to coordinate an interview. During that interview, we're not testing your knowledge of liberal arts. This is more just for us to ask some additional questions that may have come up as we've reviewed your application. Then if you're admitted to the program, the tuition for this current academic year is just over $4,100 per course. And as Tim said, there's 9 courses in the program. So we're just under $38,000 for the total tuition of the program. While that is a lot of money, we do have merit scholarships. So you encourage you, if you're interested in being considered for a merit scholarship, to apply as early as possible, because we review scholarships for merit on a rolling basis. So please apply as soon as possible if you want to be considered for one of those. And then we also strongly encourage you to be to talk to your employer. If you're currently working, many employers have really strong tuition reimbursement benefits, and we see quite a few students use those to help fund their education. And then if you are considering loans, students who take 2 to 3 courses per quarter can qualify to receive federal aid. If you are taking just 1 course a quarter, which we see many of our employed students do, you can also consider private loans then.
Well, thank you, Carrie. We are now at the time where we are looking for your questions. And so I'm going to open up the chat to see what may be there. But we also are very eager to just answer your questions directly here. So let me add spotlights. And if you have a question, you can feel free to unmute and shout it out, or raise your hand in the function. And let me just start, unless there's anyone live who wants to jump in with at least one of the questions in the chat that I see here, which is about employability. So can you talk a little bit about the fields that people seek out after this degree and successes with career change? And Tim, maybe we could start with you on that front and what you see. I'll acknowledge that the MLA is a unique degree because most of our students are in a role already, and so they're typically moving in that career within a company, or there is a subset, maybe it's about 10 to 20%, who are kind of seeing this almost as a degree they retire to as part of that next chapter. So the employment would look very strong, but it's not necessarily in most cases that we are playing a role in placing. It's more that they're taking this knowledge that they're gaining and applying it. But we do have some people that do career shifts. So that's something that is a real possibility. And Tim, I don't know if you want to talk to this question of employability after the MLA and the role it can play for people that may want to make a career transition.
So the career transitions that I can think of our recent graduates tend to be people moving into education. So either working in higher ed administration or with a master's degree, and if they meet enough of their electives in a common field, that they can get teaching jobs in community colleges and some colleges. So a few recent students have done that and moved into the higher ed space. I will say more broadly, one of the resources that's available to our students is managed through the Central University's graduate student office. And they have career counseling services and employment fairs and that sort of thing that are available to all graduate students at UChicago, including students in our program.
And then we have a follow-up here from the person that asked this. I'm interested in fields that seek out your students. So to the extent that we have fields where people are talking about this type of liberal arts degree, I'll acknowledge that I see technology, law, finance among areas where there's interest. For many of those individuals, and certainly law, there is already a core degree, meaning, an MBA or a JD. And then this is additive in building some of those leadership and synthetic thinking skills. Tim, I don't know if you want to add it all to those fields.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I will say occasionally I get emails from some community colleges in the area looking for instructors, but that just reemphasizes my earlier point about higher ed. But when I saw Andrea's question earlier in the chat, I made a note of it. There are some specific things I know on our website in prior years, we ran articles that I think speak to this. So I made a note to follow up with you afterwards via email, send you some of the links to some of the articles that we had put on the website touching on this question.
Katie, we see your hand. Hi.
Hi, thank you. Um, Thank you for facilitating this. I was looking at past and current course offerings and faculty. Are courses repeated or are courses and faculty consistently differing?
Yeah, so the answer is both, but I'll let Tim speak more to that.
Yeah, the answer is both. Probably about between half and 2/3 of the classes that you see are repeated. And in the instances where they're not, the same faculty member will be back teaching a similar class. So one that you might see on there is David Ray, a classes professor. We've mentioned a bunch of his classes tonight, World Wisdom Literature. He's teaching the upcoming residential seminar on Homer. So even if the exact same class of David's isn't repeating, David will be back teaching something in that realm. And then this also gets to the academic advising that our staff does with students. When we find out that you're interested in the class, we'll have some insight on this faculty is going on sabbatical next year. So if this is interesting to you, jump on it this year because it might not be back around for another 2 years or so. But I guess another way of saying that is the faculty tend to repeat year after year, and the courses that they teach might change a little bit while obviously staying within their realm of specialty.
One other exciting aspect of the MLA is that because we have a more open curriculum than some other degrees that have more rigidity because they're trying to get someone to a technical knowledge set, we do see creativity among our faculty, sometimes driven by a relationship to the modern world. So as an example, I'm thinking of, I think it was Faith Hillis that ran that course on the history between Russia and Ukraine, soon after the war began. And she is a historian of that era and that focus, but the way she framed the class was really for people that wanted to understand this history in the context of the very challenging moment that was taking place. So there's also a little bit of tailoring, Katie, to the moment that can make these classes more interesting, and that may not be possible in other programs where there needs to be a slightly more formulaic approach to getting people toward a knowledge set for their degree. Beth, I mean, you've taken a lot of these courses. Anything to add as a student in these courses and how they repeat and how you were able to select your courses over time?
Yeah, and I think it's really, I mean, I'd look at the classes of and what sparked my interest, and I'd go a couple quarters out to see, because sometimes you could see that. And I like Professor Miller, who taught some versions of the Apocalypse. He taught another class like a couple quarters later that was really interesting, and another, it was for the humanities credit, so I didn't take it, but I almost did just because he was such a great professor. So yeah, they do it, and then same thing. You can see him come back through again. And then also you get a lot of conversation. You hear a lot of conversation with the other students too about their experiences. Like example, one of my friends that was one of my good friends going forward. She had a question about a class and she called me. That's how we got to be friends, because she was asking my opinion on it. So that's the other side of it. The students are really good about sharing knowledge and thoughts too.
Another question in the chat, Tim, is there a GPA graduation requirement? In order to graduate, you need to get a certain set of grades.
A 3.0, a B average.
Any other questions that you may have?
I have a question.
Go for it.
I work at the University of Chicago, and I just moved here a few weeks ago, so I'm a local, and I would have interest in taking some of the courses in person. Is there a way to do course substitutions with other departments, like some of the courses in the humanities?
Absolutely. And Tim can speak to this. I believe we allow 2 at least course substitutions, but there may even be ways to go further, especially if there's an overlapping professor who could, even add it as an independent study. But I mean, Tim, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the general rule of thumb is 2 of your electives can be taken outside of the MLA offerings on the main campus, especially with a faculty endorsement, there could be we do We do want our students to take the core requirements with us. It's a very particular, specific curriculum, but for the electives, especially if it's going to help, pursue your interests or your career goals, then with faculty endorsement, we could talk about doing more outside of the MLA in the main divisions.
I did that too. I took one at Booth. I did a leadership class at Booth, but it's different because it was all with MBA class students. So it was a way different feel. So, which was good because I went down to the campus, once a week, and it was just a good experience. And then the residential was different, but.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that, Al, is that to the extent you're able to take a full week, every spring and autumn, there's a residential seminar option. So there are at least a handful of students who really fill their basket because they love the in-person with the residential seminar as a kind of core piece. Yeah, Beth raising her hand as one of them. And one nice thing about that, I'll just say, is Zoom can be really meaningful when you're in a small room. You do get to know people really well, but the residential seminar, in our view, amplifies that. So you get back to the online classroom after you've been with people for a week and you know them even more deeply, and the relationship on Zoom sustains in a new way. So we see real mutuality between those two forms. Any other questions that you may have? We want to be respectful of everyone's time. Yeah. Joshua. Oh, yeah, there we go. Perfect. You're off mute.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering if that seminar, it said it's non-credit, but somebody said that it counts towards a credit.
Yeah, so the residential seminar, it's a great question. Because we're the home of lifelong learning, we do sometimes allow some of our lifelong learners to be part of that seminar experience as a non-credit experience. But for MLA students, you do finish and have an essay that you write, and then you do receive full credit for the course, if that makes sense. So that is a unique opportunity because we wanted to enable that interaction between different learning communities.
And with that tuition price, I also see that you offer a scholarship for that for people who can't afford the whole seminar. Now, is that for MLA students as well?
Yes, so there's both. So for example, community members who want to participate in it, but as a learning experience alone, there's one type of scholarship we're able to give out. For the MLA, you can receive, when you apply, a merit scholarship. That's not exclusive to the residential seminar. It's a scholarship for your general studies, if that makes sense. And so it applies across all of the courses that you take, depending on the amount that is given. But at the point of your, offer, you would receive that at the same time, so you could consider whether or not that makes financial as well as programmatic sense for you. So there are actually different bodies of resources within the university in terms of how we do it between non-credit and credit, but it's the same idea of, yes, we want to make this accessible, and we have scholarship available as a opportunity for students that qualify. And in the case of the MLA, it's a merit-based scholarship. So that qualification is based on your merit and your promising candidacy. It is not one where you need to fill out financial information, or that's taken into account.
Okay.
Any other questions that you may have?
Can you take the bus down to High Park for that seminar? Hop on
Absolutely.
that bus
Yeah, we're a
down?
very well-located campus. The best ways and for those who are in the area are the Metra, and then there are a number of buses, the numbers of which I'm somehow stumbling on, even though I've taken some of them myself over time. But we are conveniently located, and then the classes that we run as a school also take place, less so in the MLA, downtown at the Gleacher Center, for those who are interested in lifelong learning more broadly. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Callie, I see you have the last word, so I'm gonna.
I was just going to point out that I think there's another question in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much. Is there a way for preparing for the degree, especially with writing, if you haven't written anything substantial for a while? That is a great question. We have a fantastic writing advisor, but let me turn over, Tim and Beth, to you. To how do you get ready? Beth, when you think about your orientation and trying to prepare. Tim, if you have tips for students that do get in and want to get ready and get here ready to hit the ground running. Beth, you want to just start with any tips of the trade?
Yeah, I didn't really prepare in terms of like before I started, but I think right when the class, I got the books and did some of the readings in advance, but not. I mean, I just jumped right in, and the classes are on like mine, like on a night from like 6:30 to 9:30, and then I'd spend on the Monday reading. So it kind of came together, and I think once I kind of got in the rhythm of the class, but I didn't in terms of and that, like you said, the writing tutor was there too, or writing advisor was there if you had questions. So no, it wasn't any advance. Maybe Tim has more examples, but I just I kind of just jumped right in and went from there.
So like Carrie mentioned in her application overview, if you have a writing sample and you're unsure about it, we'll review it before you submit it. But to the specific question about preparing your writing for the program, I mean, the Graham School has non-credit writing courses that are sort of designed for this sort of thing. I mean, designed for a lot of things in mind, but certainly work in this context. But just more broadly, I think a lot of the faculty members would say that the best way to improve your writing is just to read a bunch and write. So doing a lot of reading and then writing your reflections on your reading, and you'll see that like anything, practice will improve the skill.
And it gears up in the class. I mean, like when you start the class, you kind of have maybe to write some stuff on the online chat kind of thing, the Canvas. But then when you write a paper, you do a little bit over time as you're going through the class. So it really builds on itself as you really from the beginning to the end of the class. So you don't have to, you really expands your learning as you go. I guess that's the point of learning, right?
Well, so I'll just say in closing that I think this is the jewel of our school. I think this is such a special opportunity to see across the entirety of the university and to have peers who are really committed to intellectual discovery for its own sake, as well as advancement in life and career. And maybe if it's okay, Tim and Beth, can I give you one parting shot here? One, really meaningful takeaway you have from leading the program, Tim, from being in the program, Beth. Tim, Beth, let's start with you.
No, it kind of, that's going to sound kind of hokey, but it changed my life. I mean, it was a period where I was burned out in my company and was ready to do something different. And it was the highlight. I mean, it was one of those things where I felt like I really accomplished something by finishing the program. And I just can't say enough good things about how wonderful it was. The experience with my classmates, the program, the leaders, and just the rigor of the learning, and just exciting. Changed my life. Really a great program. Can't say enough of good things about it. And being connected to it, there's just so many opportunities after you're done too. So it doesn't end.